Hello out there and good morning, traders. It is June 26, 2024. Welcome to the Apteros Daily Market Insight. I apologize. I got rid of my levels from yesterday, so I didn't take a screenshot in time to do a recap or anything like that. But essentially, yesterday's neutrality in the context and in the narrative that I was talking about held true. There wasn't much opportunity overall throughout the session. It really didn't break away from that center area that we were kind of looking at. It kind of rotated around it and really just became a choppy session overall. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity from a DMI perspective in that zone. So one of those situations where we're reading dissonance in this market, and that dissonance is still here even today. And whenever you're in that type of environment, often chop, rotational expectations and behavior are consistent and they persist for multiple days. And that's what we're seeing today. So, kind of leading in from yesterday, talking about the dissonance that we had in the market into today's read as well, it's still there. We have two time frames that are set up essentially in a bearish from one perspective and a bullish from another perspective. The bullish one is kind of at the edge of its sustainability, but it's still viable, right? So that's creating dissonance between the bears and the bulls, and the result is that we're seeing a rotational or a balanced market on lower time frames, and that's what we have here today. So taking a look at our scenarios and our line in the sand areas, essentially over the last 3 days, we've been building value in this area here. So any departures from this zone are going to be important for us from a contextual perspective, in that we're going to be getting more information from one direction of the market or the other. Anything in between is a consistent rotational, pattern. And that's really what we find ourselves in terms of the situations today. So breaking that down into straightforward, kind of scenarios. Scenario one is that what is picture. Anytime that we are working with the DMIs, usually scenario one is that what is picture, unless I have a specific reason to change it. So the what is picture, the current acceptance in price is that we remain rotational. Scenario two would be that breakout scenario, in that we could look to the downside if we end up seeing the down move here. First target would be this neutral area here, and a possible continuation if the market really gets bullish, or I'm sorry, really gets bearish down into the 82s. And then, of course, scenario three would be a break up. In other words, coming back up to test this excess area here, pushing out to the 60s. And then if we get above that, possible continuation, trade above that, out into open space, up into the O2s. And that would kind of be the overall landscape what we're looking at today. But this is really the bulk of where the DMI is for the session here. Looking at scenario one, scenario two, and scenario three. And that would kind of be the general expectation for today. So remember, use your intraday frameworks to kind of distinguish and do tiebreakers between these particular areas. Look for acceptance in the market. Trade the what is picture until proven otherwise. That kind of thing all holds true here today. The one thing I will say about the what is picture, scenario one, we've been in it now for 3 days. We've been rotational and mentioning this dissonance and talking about it and so forth. Eventually, this will resolve. We are not in the business of predicting when that's going to resolve itself. We only trade what is. So it's one of those things where the longer and longer this value or this rotation persists, the more and more the recency gets lower, the weaker and weaker the narrative gets. Those are our rules around NADRO narrative. We don't really grade them necessarily, but if you're putting them in the hierarchy, recency is one of the most important factors, right? So the more recent market generated information makes a better narrative. The longer that the same old thing is persisting and persisting and persisting, the weaker that narrative gets, because the market will start seeking value and looking for changes in value as well based on new information coming into that market. So that's the idea here. We've been in this area for 3 or 4 days because the dissonance is still butting up against one another, and that's expected. That's normal NADRO contextual reads and stuff like that. The longer this persists, the weaker and weaker that what is picture will continue to get. And then once we break from that area, the information will become more clear in terms of a bias, in terms of the line in the sand and the direction of this market. So trade well out there, mind your risk, and let's get after it.